You are not broken. You are haunted by something your mind never had the tools to process. And the difference between those two things could change your entire life. Emotional flashbacks don't look like memories. Most people assume trauma shows up as vivid, visual replays of terrifying events. But the most common and devastating symptom of complex PTSD arrives with no images at all. No story, no memory, just a wave of emotion so overwhelming it feels like you are being swallowed whole, and you have absolutely no idea why. There is a question that haunts almost everyone living with CPTSD. Why do I feel completely destroyed by situations that should not even matter? Why do I suddenly feel like a terrified child? In a conversation, in a meeting, in a moment that seems completely ordinary to everyone else. If you have ever been overwhelmed by an emotion you could not explain, and wondered what is fundamentally wrong with you, stay until the end. This video is for you, today. We are going inside the most misunderstood symptom of CPTSD, emotional flashbacks. By the end, you will understand exactly what they are, why they feel so catastrophic, and most importantly, why feeling broken is not evidence that you are broken. What is CPTSD? To understand emotional flashbacks, we first need to understand what CPTSD actually is. Because confusion between complex PTSD and regular PTSD is part of why so many people go undiagnosed for years, sometimes decades. PTSD typically develops after a single identifiable traumatic event, a car accident, a violent assault, a natural disaster. The brain encodes this event as a threat it struggles to fully process. That much most people understand. But in the 1980s, a therapist and author named Pete Walker began working with clients whose trauma did not fit this model at all. They had not experienced one terrible event. They had experienced thousands of smaller ones, and these happened during childhood while the brain was still forming. Walker eventually coined the term complex PTSD to describe what happens when trauma is repeated, relational, and developmental, when the threat was not a single event. It was a person, a parent, a caregiver, the home itself. The place that was supposed to be safe became the source of the wound. Unlike a single traumatic event, this kind of chronic exposure does not just leave a mark. It reshapes the nervous system at its very foundation. The brain does not simply react to this kind of trauma, it reorganizes around it. And that reorganization produces something far more difficult to recognize than a standard flashback. Something that even many therapists still overlook. Repeated wounds. Imagine a child who grows up in a home where a parent is unpredictable, sometimes warm, sometimes terrifying, or a child whose emotional needs are consistently dismissed or ridiculed, or a child who receives the message in 1,000 ways, both spoken and unspoken, that they are too much, not enough, a burden, or fundamentally flawed at their core. This is the landscape of complex PTSD. Not a single wound, but a pattern of wounds that never had the chance to close because the environment creating them never became safe. The developing brain has one primary directive: survive. And to survive in a dangerous or emotionally chaotic environment, it adapts in extraordinary ways. The nervous system learns to stay on high alert. The child develops a hypervigilant radar, constantly scanning faces, tones of voice, the sound of footsteps in the hall, for any signal of danger approaching. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for logical thinking and emotional regulation, becomes chronically overwhelmed. The amygdala, the brain's threat center, takes command. What remains is a nervous system brilliant enough to keep a child alive in a threatening environment, but now struggling to distinguish between a real threat and a perceived one. If this is helping you understand yourself or someone you love, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring the depths of your psyche with me. Because what comes next is the heart of everything. Emotional flashbacks. Here is where we arrive at the core of everything. Pete Walker, in his essential book Complex PTSD, From Surviving to Thriving, introduced a concept that transformed how we understand this condition: the emotional flashback. When most people hear the word flashback, they picture the movie version. A sudden, vivid replay of a traumatic memory, images flooding the mind, sensory details so sharp they feel physically present. That is what PTSD flashbacks often resemble. Emotional flashbacks are completely different. No image, no memory, no narrative. In an emotional flashback, there is no visual component at all, no scene being replayed, no story attached. There is only feeling, a sudden, overwhelming surge of emotion. Fear, shame, worthlessness, smallness, complete helplessness, that crashes over you with the full intensity of an original childhood crisis. You feel it entirely. You feel it in your chest, your throat, your stomach, but you cannot explain it. You cannot trace it back to any specific memory because it is not coming from a memory. It is coming from an emotional state. One your nervous system learned to freeze in place because it was too much to process in the moment it was first experienced. The emotional flashback is the defining feature of CPTSD and the most overlooked. And this is precisely why it is so devastating. But here is what makes it even harder to navigate. The invisible flood. Let us sit with this distinction because it is everything. When you experience an emotional flashback, your brain is not replaying an event, it is replaying a state, and there is a critical difference in how the brain stores these two things. Episodic memory. The memory of what happened is stored in the hippocampus. It carries context, narrative, timestamps. You can examine it and say, that happened then, that is in the past, that is not happening now. But emotional memory is stored primarily in the amygdala, your brain's threat detection center. The amygdala does not care about narrative. It does not come with timestamps. It fires based on pattern recognition, continuously scanning for signals that a current experience resembles something that once meant danger. Your amygdala cannot tell the difference between then and now. When it detects a pattern that maps onto an old threat, it does not send you a memory. It sends you the emotion, the raw, unprocessed feeling of the original moment at exactly the same intensity. This is why people in emotional flashbacks describe feeling like a terrified child again, even without any visual memory of childhood, because that is precisely what is happening. The feeling is real. The danger is not current, but your nervous system does not know that yet. And the question that arises from this changes everything. What exactly gets preserved inside that frozen state? The child state. When an emotional flashback hits, something remarkable and terrifying happens simultaneously. In an instant, with no visible cause, you are no longer an adult in the present moment. You are back in the emotional reality of your child self, not as a memory, as a present experience. The smallness, the powerlessness, the sense that you are in real danger and there is nothing you can do. The feeling that you are fundamentally wrong, too much, not enough, unworthy of safety or love. The child inside you is not a metaphor. They are a living emotional state, preserved in amber. And the reason this frozen state exists is actually a form of protective intelligence. When a child is repeatedly overwhelmed by emotions, they have no tools to process. In environments where there is no safety to express those feelings, the brain does what it must to keep the child functional. It compartmentalizes. It seals the unbearable feeling away. The body holds what the mind cannot carry. But that packaged emotional state does not disappear. It waits. It waits for something in the present environment to echo the original conditions. A raised voice, a dismissive look, a moment of feeling invisible, a situation that recreates the original sense of helplessness. And the moment the nervous system recognizes that echo, the seal breaks, and there you are again, small, terrified, overwhelmed, with the full weight of that original feeling and absolutely no idea why. Trigger trap. One of the most disorienting aspects of emotional flashbacks is the trigger, because from the outside, and even from the inside, it often makes no rational sense. You can be having a completely ordinary day, then something small happens. Someone sends a short, neutral text. A friend cancels plans without much explanation. Your boss uses a particular tone. A conversation falls silent for a beat too long, and suddenly everything collapses. You are overwhelmed, ashamed, terrified, or flooded with rage in a way that feels completely disproportionate to what just occurred. And part of you knows it is disproportionate, which only deepens the shame spiral. This is because triggers are not logical, they are associative. Your nervous system is fundamentally a pattern matching machine. It does not evaluate situations through logic first. It scans for resemblance to previously stored threats. A tone of voice that sounds like an angry parent. A facial expression that echoes a caregiver's disappointment. The feeling of being left waiting that maps precisely onto emotional abandonment in childhood. The trigger does not need to make conscious sense. It only needs to rhyme with something old. And when the nervous system recognizes that rhyme, the response arrives at full intensity. But the trigger alone is not what makes emotional flashbacks so unbearable. Because the moment one hits, there is a voice that enters, and it makes every second of it exponentially worse. Inner critic attack. During an emotional flashback, you do not simply feel the original helplessness and fear. You also hear a voice, and this voice does not soften. It does not comfort. You're too much, you're broken. In CPTSD, the inner critic is one of the most destructive forces, and it is intimately connected to emotional flashbacks. Pete Walker describes this inner critic as an internalized voice that mimics the criticism, contempt, or emotional neglect of early caregivers. Here is the painful logic behind it. When a child has no power to change a dangerous or neglectful environment, the mind finds a way to feel some sense of control by turning the blame inward. If I am the problem, maybe I can fix it. If I become perfect enough, invisible enough, good enough, maybe I can finally become safe. That internalized critical voice becomes the mind's default response to any moment of vulnerability. So when the emotional flashback hits, when you are already drowning in worthlessness and smallness, the inner critic amplifies everything. You are overreacting, you are pathetic, something is fundamentally wrong with you, you will never get better. The shame spiral intensifies the flashback. The flashback deepens the shame. And somewhere in the center of all of this, the conclusion that feels most certain forms that you are simply irreparably broken. Shame is the intensely painful feeling that we are unworthy of love and belonging. But that conclusion is the flashback speaking, not reality. And the next thing I am going to tell you may be the most important thing in this entire video. Naming the storm. Here is something that takes real time to learn, but once you learn it, it shifts something fundamental in your experience. You cannot think your way out of an emotional flashback while it is happening. Trying to use logic to reason yourself out of a state occurring below the level of rational thought is like trying to talk yourself out of a physical reflex. The flashback is a nervous system event. It requires a nervous system response, but what you can learn to do. And this is genuinely where recovery begins to take root, is to recognize what is happening as it is happening. Pete Walker calls this flashback management, and the foundational step is deceptively simple, learning to name it. I am not broken, I am in a flashback. This is an emotional state, not reality. That sentence, when you can actually access it while inside the flashback, is extraordinary because naming activates the prefrontal cortex. It begins to bring the thinking brain back online. It creates the smallest but most essential gap between you and the wave. You are not the wave, you are in the wave. Other practices build on this foundation. Body-based grounding, regulated breathing, somatic therapy, internal family systems, but the beginning of all healing is the same. Name what is happening without fighting it, without judging it, just name it, and then everything this entire video has been building toward comes together in what I am about to tell you. Stay with me. You are not broken. Let me return to the question I opened with. Why do you feel completely destroyed by situations that seem small to everyone else? Why do you feel suddenly small, terrified, and worthless? With no explanation, no visual memory, no visible cause, here is the answer that shame never gave you. You are not broken. You are having an emotional flashback. You are being transported, not to a memory, but to a feeling state, the emotional state of a child who was overwhelmed, alone, and without the resources to process what they were experiencing. Your nervous system encoded that state to protect you. It preserved it, and decades later, when it detects an echo of the original conditions, a pattern, a tone, a moment of helplessness, it opens that preserved state and floods your present experience with it. The feeling is real. The original pain was absolutely real. But the story the flashback tells about who you are, that you are too broken to be loved, too damaged to be whole, too far gone to heal. That story is a symptom, not a truth. You are not broken. You are a person whose nervous system learned to survive something it should never have had to survive alone. That is not weakness. That is profound resilience. You believe healing from emotional flashbacks is truly possible, or do you think it is something you learn to live alongside? Comment healing or living below, and if you know someone carrying this invisible, exhausting weight, send this to them right now. They need to hear this truth. The way back home. So what does healing from CPTSD and emotional flashbacks actually look like? I want to be honest with you. It is not linear and it is not fast. It is not about reaching a place where you never feel the old feelings again. Healing looks like building a relationship with yourself that your early environment could not provide, learning to be present for your own pain, to meet it with the compassion a safe caregiver would have offered. Some of the most evidence-based approaches for CPTSD include EMDR, which helps the brain metabolize stored emotional states so they lose their overwhelming charge. Internal family systems, or IFS, which helps you understand and care for the different parts of yourself, including the exiled child part still carrying old pain, and somatic therapies, body-based approaches, because trauma lives in the body, and the body needs its own language of healing. 1. Name the flashback when it arrives. 2. Ground yourself in body, breath, senses. 3. Speak to yourself as a compassionate witness. 4. Seek trauma-informed therapeutic support. And perhaps most fundamentally, self-compassion, not passive acceptance, but an active daily practice of turning toward the child inside you and saying the words they needed to hear most. You were never the problem. You were always worthy. You were always enough. Healing is not returning to who you were before. It is becoming who you were always meant to be. The way back is not behind you. It is forward. CPTSD does not make you broken. It makes you a person who survived something that left traces. Deep, invisible traces that a child's mind was never equipped to carry alone. Emotional flashbacks are not evidence of your weakness or your failure. They are evidence that your nervous system did everything it could to protect a child who desperately needed protection. You were never broken. You were overwhelmed. You were a child without the tools to process what was placed on you. And there is a world of difference between those two things. The path forward, the path toward feeling genuinely safe in your own body and your own life, begins the moment you stop treating your symptoms as proof of your inadequacy and start treating them as messages from a part of you that is still waiting to be heard, still waiting to be seen, still waiting for the one thing it never received: your compassionate, patient, unconditional attention. The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. Give that part of you what it has always deserved. You are not too far gone. You are exactly where healing begins. If you made it here to the end, comment emotional truth below, because you are now part of a rare group of people who are choosing to understand themselves rather than judge themselves, and that choice is the beginning of everything. Welcome to the Psyche Project. If this opened something in you, hit like and subscribe. Understanding yourself is the work of a lifetime. See you in the next video.